travels for Norm. Want to give a shout out again to our producer, our late producer, James Braun. We just want to keep his memory alive, and we'll continue to do that over the course of the days and months ahead. And of course, his sister Khaki. Hello, Khaki. I hope everything's going well down there in Philadelphia. Look to talk to you soon. And so, Willie.
Yes, sir.
We got to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world.
What is going on in the world?
Well, I came across an article written by Tom Baggioni. It was entitled "Disavow Trump and Let Him Face Justice."
That sounds good. That sounds good to me.
Kevin McCarthy was lit up by the Sacramento Bee for his conduct. And it's intriguing because I titled this for this section of the program, Republicans Just Won't Cut Trump Loose.
Wow.
And they just can't.
Wow.
They're going to have a debate, whatever that means, for people that all have the same view of everything. They're going to have a debate on Wednesday so that the 8 or 9 remaining Republican candidates can all get their digs in to try to get the support of whoever it is they're trying to get support from for their candidacy. And what was I about to go with there? But the lead up to this, if you listen to the news reports, they're all about Trump, and even though they're saying things that are either negative or are talking about something that would be perceived as negative, they're constantly repeating Trump's name over and over and over again. So now you have a soundbite, or not soundbite, a section of a program. I'm watching MSNBC, and this segment was on the upcoming debate. So in the upcoming debate, there are 9 people that are going to be in the debate, and only one of them, in fact, I'm not even sure there's 9. It might be 8 plus Trump. You can't count Trump because Trump says he's not going to attend the debate. So if there's 8 people, not including Donald Trump, who is not involved, who is not going to be at the debate, wouldn't you think that the conversation would be about those 8 people?
Wow.
Picking some people amongst those 8 people and say, here's the trends with this one. Here are the thoughts of this one. Here's who's got X number of amount of support. Who's got this amount of money. You would think that would be the substance of that segment on the debate. But the segment was entirely based on, well, Donald Trump isn't going to be at the debate. How is that going to affect the debate? What are Donald Trump's thoughts? What are your thoughts about Donald Trump? Can you really afford to say something negative about Donald Trump? Will it cost you your base if you say something out loud? Like, oh, Donald Trump tried to interfere with the election. Oh, if I say, you mean it's documented? Yeah, it's documented. Oh, we can't say that out loud because Donald Trump's base won't like it. Donald Trump's base isn't going to like anything you say that does not say I like Donald Trump.
But that's where his power lies, in that base. I mean,
well, if that base represents 30% of the electorate, you should write that base off. You should just let that go. They're not going to vote for you anyway.
No, they're not going to let Mr. Hare, come on.
Why?
Don't now you sound like you're in a dream world. They're not going to let that base go because that's what they want. They want to stay in the privilege. They want that privilege. They know Trump is the only way they can right now that they can keep that privilege. So no, he's not losing that base.
I think that's bad mathematics.
Well,
I mean, I agree with you that every one of these Republicans that are up to bat to claim that they're going to run for the nomination or they're fighting for the nomination, I agree with you that every one of them supports Donald Trump's agenda.
Right.
But the reality is there aren't enough of them in a general election for them to be able to win the votes in the general election.
Mr. Hare, once again, dream world.
You think I'm dreaming?
Well, slavery. How many of us was more than them? Probably 20 times as much.
No. There was only 4.5 million of us in January of 1865. Yeah, there's 4.5 million of us, right? There's maybe 500,000 of us up in the north, scattered around Canada and the northern states. But Most of us were in the South, 4.5 million. There were about 23 million other people in the country.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm
So
wrong
there's
then.
a lot more of them than there was
Okay,
of us.
I'm sorry.
That's
yeah.
why they were able to conquer us, because
Gotcha.
there was a
Okay.
lot more of them
Lot
than there
more.
was of us.
Okay.
Right. So we have to keep our eye on the prize.
Mm-hmm.
We can't allow ourselves to be distracted by misinformation, disinformation, outright campaigns of lies. You know, you get people like Ron DeSantis. Why aren't they attacking him, not just as in terms of his politics, in terms of his intellectual acumen? This man had the audacity, and I reported this about a month and a half ago. He had the audacity to claim that the anti-slavery movement began as a result of the creation of the United States. He said that the Declaration of Independence and the establishment of the Constitution of the United States was the beginning of the abolitionist movement. Wow. Not even the anti-slavery. He didn't say the anti-slavery movement. He said the abolitionist movement. Because abolition does not necessarily mean that you believe that African people and European people are the same level of humanity. It doesn't mean the same thing. It just means that you think that you shouldn't base your economy on slavery. You know, you should send all little slaves back to wherever you found them. You know, just dump them on the shores of Gory Island. You know, or never mind. It gets too gross for me to go down that road. But my main point, however, is that you would be voting for a Ron DeSantis who had the gall or the lack of intellectual acumen to state that the creation of the United States was the beginning of the abolitionist movement. You know, we established that all men are created equal. It's written in our Declaration of Independence. You know, all men are created equal. Well, I wouldn't go through the whole speech, but he asserts that because that's in the Declaration of Independence, that meant that they were covering all men being created equal.
Right.
Clearly, they could not have thought this, the people that were the founding fathers of the United States. And I don't just mean the 13 people that signed the Declaration of Independence. I mean all of them. You know, the 6 or 8 or 9 million of them that were in the United States at that time, in the colonies at that time.
Right.
All of them accepted the enslavement of African people, and at least 25% of them either owned African people,
right,
or they had relationships with people in their households,
right,
who owned African people.
Right.
They didn't have any problem with that.
Right.
So every single one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence was a slave owner.
Right.
Every single one of them.
Right.
So to assert that these people were latent abolitionists, you know, that they had this you know, moral thing, you know, in them that made them state that all men are created equal and so on, that they're endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, the assertion that meant that these people believed that all people actually were created equal is absurd,
right,
on its face,
right,
unless you're asserting, which I believe they may have asserted, that African people weren't men.
Yeah.
That we were horses.
I think
we were talking dogs.
Yeah. I think that was it right there.
I honestly believe that.
Yeah. Right.
So it's important that we hold people to account to the truth, not just holding Donald Trump to account for breaking all kinds of laws, but we should also hold everybody to account for telling the truth.
Right.
And these people that they're talking about have not been telling the truth. The Sacramento Bee, which endorsed Ronald Reagan, and you know, I don't know if they endorsed Donald Trump, but they endorsed most Republicans. They jumped on Kevin McCarthy because when Kevin McCarthy learned of the 4th round of indictments against Kevin McCarthy, McCarthy went on to say, "Justice should be blind. But Biden has weaponized government against his leading political opponent to interfere in the 2024 election." Now, this is a spin that Kevin McCarthy, the current Speaker of the House of Representatives, this is a spin that he's been running that I'm sure somebody in some Republican think tank has come up with. Here's a way that we can attack, the Democrats and the liberals and whatnot, and take some pressure off of Trump and make the Democrats have to, prove that what we're saying isn't true. So what they're saying is that the investigations leading to these indictments were done against Donald Trump because the Democrats felt that Donald Trump was the biggest threat to their being able to win the presidency in 2024. And so they weaponized the Department of Justice and the FBI to attack Donald Trump and to prevent him from becoming the nominee and then winning the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
That's the spin that they're putting out.
Right.
But the reality is the investigation into the January 6, 2021 insurrection, that investigation began the day after the insurrection. And they began the formal investigation of Donald Trump as an agent who was a part of, if not the author of, that insurrection.
Mm-hmm.
They began that investigation, I believe it was in November of 2021. Donald Trump didn't announce his candidacy until November of 2022, a year later. It's Donald Trump who mounted a presidential campaign to try to make it difficult for the Justice Department to be able to investigate him and hold him to account, because the custom of this country is that you don't investigate people who are running for office, because it would make you look like these banana republics, where people are getting knocked off to eliminate them as
Right.
a presidential candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans are laying out as their line, that the investigations and the indictments of Donald Trump are essentially a political campaign that the Democrats have been mounting to prevent Donald Trump from regaining the presidency, when in fact the investigation into Donald Trump's behavior began a year before Donald Trump announced his candidacy. It's Donald Trump who's using the political campaign to mask over the investigation into his conduct, claiming that it's election tampering to be prosecuting Donald Trump when he's an announced candidate for the presidency. You can't stop an investigation. You can't start it if somebody committed murder in March of this year, and then that same person announced he was running for Senate, in April of this year. You wouldn't stop the investigation that began in March because the person who you suspected of the murder, announced his candidacy for an office in April. That just wouldn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what they're talking about right now. And it's important that we understand what's being said here. Trump is not the president. The man who beat him fairly, Democrat Joe Biden, is leading the nation. This is what is now being asserted in the Sacramento Bee. And they were actually quoting I'm sorry, I was trying to find the name of this person on the editorial board, but I lost track of it. But the point that we're trying to get here, as for weaponizing the Department of Justice and the FBI, McCarthy and his fellow Americans have yet to hear all of the evidence in the two federal and two state cases against Trump. But as they noted, McCarthy has had multiple previous opportunities to cut loose Donald Trump after the two impeachments and his earlier indictments, but McCarthy has lacked the will to stand up for the rule of law. It just seems that this is the part of the story that is being understated in the media, that we keep focusing, or the media keeps focusing on Donald Trump. And what I'm trying to help people to understand is that it's not just Donald Trump.
Right. Right.
In fact, he's not even the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the 30 to 35% of Americans who are supposedly Donald Trump's base that would actually accept and endorse the behaviors that Donald Trump is engaged in. We're talking about 7 states where they mounted fake electors to the Electoral College in each of 7 states. We're talking about a national conspiracy. We're talking about an organized, crime initiative, which is why it's covered under the RICO Act. That's why Fannie Willis, the district attorney in Fulton County in Georgia, that's why she used the RICO law. The I forget the rest of. I'm losing my ability to grab names and whatnot now. I'm starting to get a little long in the tooth. But the Racketeering, Influence, and Organized Crime Act, the RICO Act, she used that because she needed to help people to understand that this was not just Georgia. It was not just Fulton County, that this was just Georgia's part of a national scheme that was actually implemented, not even something that was talked about, a national scheme that was implemented to deny the Electoral College votes, the Electoral College votes of the states that were created by the popular will, the votes of the people in those states, to essentially wipe those votes out, not count those votes, and have the Electoral College elected by a majority vote of the joint session of the Assembly and Senate in each of these 7 states. That meant that the people who voted in those 7 states, their votes didn't count. If they had been successful, the votes that were cast in those 7 states would not have counted. Only the votes of the people who made up the legislature in those states would have counted. That is called usurpation.
Right.
That is called a coup.
Right.
The fact that you could support somebody, I don't care what you feel about their politics, the fact that you would support somebody who would do something like that to you and to your fellow citizens says something about you. And it seems to me that that's what we should be talking about day in and day out in this country.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think you hit it on the nail, Mr. Hare. Trump is just a figure that they're using, but there's people who actually, well, we saw it in the insurrection. We saw that, that there's people, and like you said, that 30 or 35 might be even more. They want to be in control. They want to control things, so they'll do whatever possible to do it. And Trump is just a figurehead.
Yeah. So the Sacramento Bee went through a sort of a dissertation on what actually went down in Arizona. Why the Bee was talking about what went down in Arizona and wasn't talking about what goes on in California is another story. But we want to take the research that they did, the indictment that they talked about of Donald Trump. This is what the indictment was about in Arizona. Rusty Bowers, who was a former Speaker of the House in Arizona, he was a material person in this scheme. Not that he was an author of the scheme; he was one who was being appealed to by the Republicans to play a role. Right. Trump and his attorney Rudy Giuliani called Bowers on November 22nd, 2020. I'm going to show you sort of a timeline, so you can see that this is an actual scheme. It's a plan. So they talked to Bowers, Rusty Bowers, on November 22nd of 2020. And Giuliani made false statements concerning fraud in the election of in Arizona, and requested, and importuned Bowers to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Arizona. This term importuned that's used in the article, it means to harass someone persistently. If you have heard the phone call to Raffensperger in Georgia, you see what the definition is of harassing somebody persistently, right? So Bowers spoke about this call when he testified in front of the House Select Committee that investigated the January 26th insurrection. Giuliani and a woman named Jenna Lynn Ellis, who is a Trump attorney, spoke to unnamed Arizona lawmakers during a meeting. They didn't know for sure if it was on or just or close to November 30th. But in this meeting, Giuliani and Ellis made false statements about fraud and unlawfully appointing presidential electors, according to the indictment. Trump joined the meeting by phone and made false statements about fraud in the election. And they have this stuff on tape. Giuliani and Ellis met with Bowers and other Arizona state lawmakers in Phoenix on or about December 1. So remember, we started this out on November 22nd. Mm-hmm. Now we're on December 1. We've had at least 3 or 4 phone calls have gone on with these state legislatures during this time period, all on this same issue.
Right. Okay.
Giuliani again made false statements about election fraud in Arizona and requested lawmakers call a special session. The special session is what they wanted to have called to have the state legislature, the joint meeting of the state assembly and the state senate, to come together in a special session and for them to appoint the electors from Georgia that would go to the Electoral College. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure you know that would be illegal.
Right.
He said, but these, according to the article, were overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy. Trump called Bowers on or about Christmas Day. So we went from November 22nd,
right, December 1st,
right,
now we
Christmas Day. In 2020, for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning Bowers to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Arizona, according to the indictment. Rusty Bowers says to Trump, "I voted for you. I worked for you. I campaigned for you. I just won't do anything illegal for you."
Ooh.
Bam.
Wow.
That was like a hammer. Bam.
Wow.
Right? That's what needed to go on in every single one of the states that Trump tried to pull this stuff off in. Mm-hmm. That's what should have happened with everybody in Trump's administration.
Right. Well, Raffensperger did that.
Raffensperger did.
Right.
He waffled when he did it. You know, he acted like, somebody was cutting off his tongue. Mm-hmm. But he did do that. But he immediately endorsed new rules, new election laws.
Right. So that he can legally get away with it.
So in the next election,
right,
we can suppress the votes in the next election, right?
Right. And they probably said that was a great idea Trump had. I mean, it was illegal,
right? But it was too obvious to do it right now.
Yeah,
right.
But let's set something up where we can actually get that done.
There you go.
Yeah.
So then John Eastman, the guy who says, I didn't do anything wrong. He's one of Trump's lawyers, and he was serving, I think, as chief of staff at the end of Trump's administration. Bowers on January 4th asked, he called Bowers on January 4th and asked him to unlawfully, so now we've gone from November 22nd, mm-hmm. now we're on January 4th, we had 5 phone calls here, right?
Okay.
And he asked Bowers again, this is John Eastman now, asking Bowers again to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Arizona. And Bowers declined, saying he wouldn't risk violating his oath of office, according to this indictment. Mm-hmm. But it's important that Eastman is claiming that he should not be prosecuted in a Georgia state court because he was operating in under the cover of his role as a federal employee. Mm-hmm. He was employed by the federal government to be a chief of staff or whatever his title was under Donald Trump. And he's saying that whatever phone calls I made, whatever meetings I arranged, they were all things that I was doing as a part of my duties for Donald Trump.
Right.
But there are no duties to enact a coup to turn over the government of the United States. There's no such thing as a government work to suppress votes. There's no such thing as a government work to develop and appoint fake electors in 7 states. Those are not activities that could be covered under your work as a federal employee, because those are things you're not supposed to be doing.
That's right.
You're not supposed to be lying and
Right.
cheating and stealing,
Right.
and so on, right? So I just wanted to lay this out for our audience that in each one of these states, you will see this pattern that occurred. And the core of the indictment is that Donald Trump and his minions orchestrated a scheme to prevent the transfer of power from the Trump administration to the Biden administration, and a scheme to deny the citizens of America in several states their votes, not only for their votes to be to have occurred, but for the votes to be counted. Those are the fundamental elements of our democracy that Donald Trump tried to undo. And that's what we need to be focused on in understanding what these indictments are all about. So listen, we're going to take a quick break. I'd love to hear from folks in the audience to get some of their thoughts about what we're talking about. If you disagree with what I've been saying, it's okay. Please disagree.
That's right.
Right. We welcome all understanding, all perspectives. So we'll see you on this side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Now this one is brutal and wild.
You don't lose a stepping out sound, a champion sound, easy universal. Oh, you missed.
Music for yours and mine, stepping out, giving rub it up all time, yeah.
What?
Yes, Buffalo, once again, you are in tune with the Stepping Out Sound Session. Your host, Universal, here every Sunday night, 5 to 9 p.m., 91.3 WBNY Buffalo.
DJ Universal in the place.
Stepping Out Sound Session, Reggae Radio, every Sunday night, 5 to 9 p.m., 91.3 WBNY Buffalo.
Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan HARE. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here, your host. We're here with Willie H., who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome back, Willie.
Welcome everybody to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. Hey guys, make sure you call in. That's 716-878-5104. 716-878-5104.
Outstanding. So one of the things that we've been looking at is this, what is it that the makes up the sort of conundrum between the so-called MAGA Republicans and the Democrats and liberal type people, progressive type people in this country? What makes up that conundrum? And according to this article that we were quoting, Comer and Democrats, I didn't tell you who Comer was. Comer is James Comer, who is the chair of the House Oversight Committee. He representing the thought of the Republicans and the Democrats. They both agree that there's a threat to the United States. Both the Democrats and the Republicans agree, but they differ on what the degree or what the threat actually is. For the Democrats, they see Trump as a threat to democracy itself. The candidacy of Trump is a threat to democracy. Trump has actually said in recent weeks that if he were successful in winning the presidency, he's going to get back at all of the people he felt wronged him during the course of the past 2 years, and he's going to take away. He's going to change the rules.
He's going to be that king that cut off heads.
There you go. Right. He's going to
bring him in.
Change the rules. You know, in different states, so that the Republicans can have more control over the elections in those states.
And that's why they like him, Mr.
They love him for it, right? Because that's what they've been doing for the last couple of decades,
right?
And they got somebody who's helping them to really, you know, man the oars.
He don't mind getting stained. He don't mind getting in trouble stained. Yeah, let's use him. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
And so, but the MAGA people, the Make America Great Again people, this is interesting. They assert that Democrats really see Trump as a threat to a status quo liberalism dominated by the left. That's what seems to be the crunch on the Republican side versus the Democratic side. The Democrats see Trump as a threat to the very existence of the American democracy. And they're right, he is. The Republicans see the Democrats as a threat to maintaining the status, their threat is to maintain the status quo,
right?
And liberal thought,
right?
Of course, liberal thought would be women having the ability to control their own bodies. That's a liberal thought,
right?
That your body belongs to you.
Yeah,
that's a liberal thought, right? A liberal thought is, well, you know, if you haven't voted, you know, in every single election since 1968, why should you be allowed to vote at all now? You lost your franchise for lack of using it. That's being done in states all around the country.
Right.
The Democrats think that, you know, it was usually it's 72 degrees, you know, average temperature per day in Arizona, and now it's 96 degrees average temperature per day. Something's wrong with the climate. We should do something about that. Republicans say, well, you know, I know we might want to do something about it, but the thing we must want to do the most about is making it more possible for us to produce more products at a lower cost so that we can extract higher profits out of the production of those goods and services.
Right.
Let's get that done first. And when we get done doing that, if there's some room, you know, to lower the temperature on the thermostat, you know, by 0.5 degree, we'll do that. But let's get this profit stuff done first. That seems to be the conundrum that we're in, you know, and within that, we've always had that conundrum, but we've had restraint in terms of people getting outside of the framework of our laws and our customs. But once we went down the road of Donald Trump, we really broke that. Donald Trump didn't believe in customs. He didn't believe in norms. He didn't believe in the things that we have sort of agreed on. We didn't even need to pass laws on. We just agreed on doing things a certain way. That all got thrown out by Trump. Every time something came up that went differently than Trump wanted it to go, he said, just trash those processes, trash those rules, trash those laws. I don't care about that stuff. If they were dumb enough to go for that stuff in the past, that's on them. That seems to be the way that Trump sees it. So James Comer, referring specifically to the GOP's record in court cases, talks about Jamie Raskin laying out some 60 federal and state lawsuits over the November 3rd, 2020 election that the Republicans lost every single one. When do you ever see that? When do you ever see a complaint being made, a lawsuit being filed in 60 different jurisdictions, and you lose every single one of them?
Which means it's ridiculous, right?
That's what it means. That's right? Like slamming the door, slam,
right?
You know, and shut the door on this thing, right? We should not even consider something as nonsensical as this, right? So, but Comer has gone so far as to construct another scheme, right? That if we can construct a scheme that we can make Biden look like he's the problem rather than Donald Trump being the problem, that could be a way forward for us as a Republican Party.
Well, Mr. HARE, I got to say, according, and my opinion doesn't mean anything, but in my community, meaning when I talk to my other black people, that's what I hear. I hear people complaining about Biden. And you said, well, Trump, well, it's almost like everybody except Trump. But Biden, he's in, and once again, like you always said, then it's like all of them bad in politics, which is bad for our community because then those people don't want to really vote.
See, because that's the way you play the electorate. You try to get the people who you think would agree with you. Yeah, let's get our supremacy thing going on.
Right.
You want to get those people all pumped up and every one of them to come out to vote.
Right.
But the people that feel opposite of that,
right,
if you can't get them to change their mind and vote for you, your best outcome is to get them to not vote at all. Right.
Right.
And so the people who think they're heavy, the ones in our community, who think that they're deep.
Right.
The deep thinkers.
Right.
The ones that pull the whiskers on their chin when they're talking to you and whatnot.
Right.
Those deep thinkers. Right. And they're the ones that don't vote.
Right.
And my position is, I still like you.
Right.
But I'm not paying you any attention.
And that is the strategy of the conservative, the Republican Party, is let's do everything that we can that they won't vote. We'll put out stuff that makes some of them won't vote, and then for those who still going to vote, we'll set up, whatever we need to set up to suppress their vote.
Yeah, put up signs saying the election's on a different day.
Right.
It's not on November 3rd. It's
right.
on November 6th.
Any means necessary so they won't vote.
Yep. That is exactly the deal. So here's how Comer is trying to reduce the enthusiasm for Joe Biden. Because if you keep repeating things over and over and over again, even if they're wrong,
right,
you'll get lots of people
right.
that will think it must be right because I've been hearing it over and over and over again, right?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
what Comer has been doing is using the House Oversight Committee to create these investigations of of Joe Biden, and then assert that Joe Biden and his son, they're a part of a crime family. It's like, you got the so-and-so, mafia crime families over here, and you got the Joe Biden Irish, whatever it is, crime family over here, right? And that he's the most corrupt, president in the history of the United States.
Right.
And there's absolutely no truth in that. I mean, not even a kernel of truth in that. But that's what Comer has been saying and getting that into the news cycles.
Even the nature of Biden lets you know, and the policies and the things that he tried to do lets you know he's not that type of guy. He's really not that guy.
Right. Now, he's been a very conservative Democrat for a lot of his time.
Well, he's staying true to what he really is.
That's who he is.
And that's what I like about him. You staying true. He's saying, I'm conservative, but I want fairness for all people. And you can see it in his actions and what he tries to do.
So he was more conservative in the area of taxation, and gun control, and so on.
Right.
Until guns became a manic problem in this country. When you see kids walking around at 13 to 14 years old with AR-15s shooting up schools and whatnot, he said, well, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And so people said, well, what's wrong? People with AR-15s that are 14 years old are shooting guns.
Right.
And so what should we do about it? Well, how about let's first take the guns away from the 14-year-old people?
Right.
Let's do that first.
Let's do that first.
Right? That's the kind of thought process that Joe Biden has. You have a problem, try to figure out what's the center of the problem, try to deal with that first, then deal with all of the philosophical and aesthetic things, the people want to talk about.
Right.
So Comer, they've tried to build this a narrative that Joe Biden's son was using Biden's name to impress people in the Ukraine that he could be the juice to help them to get some deals that they wanted done, in the Ukraine. This company called Burisma, which is an oil company in the Ukraine. Now, whether that's true or not true, what's the illegal about that? kids always use their parents'
Right.
reputation, their parents' fame, their parents'
Right.
fortune, and
Right.
so on, to elevate themselves. They may say, as my daughter would say, I don't want to be getting stuff because everybody knows you and they have this relationship with you. I want to get it on my own.
Right.
I told her, well, go get it on your own. But if somebody says, and do you know Nate Hare? You better tell them real quickly. Yep, that's my daddy, right? and let whatever flows from that, let it
Right.
flow.
And they usually help,
Right.
all of us.
Exactly.
Like when people, oh, that's your father. Oh,
Right.
wow.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. And of course, as she got older, she began to understand how to integrate all of that into her life.
Right.
And she's used it, effectively,
Right.
Since that time. So, but the issue that James Comer was trying to push was that the Burisma organization had bribed Joe Biden's son, Hunter. I think they claimed that they had given him 2 installments of $5 million in each of those 2 installments to go into the pockets of Hunter Biden. The reality is that never occurred. Now there is a report from a I don't know what you call them, somebody who was like an undercover type of not a spy, but somebody who works in a spy-like way, with intelligence and so on. And in that report, the guy said that he heard from another guy that Hunter Biden, was soliciting people that if you throw a little money my way, I'll give you access to my father, who is the vice president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was said, but it wasn't said because the person who was saying this to James Comer, did that person witness that conversation? No, that person didn't witness the conversation. That person is saying that he talked to another person who said he heard from a third person.
Right.
Now, the likelihood that any of that is true is like, a snowball.
50? 50?
50?
50-50?
No, not 50-50.
No, okay.
The likelihood that occurred is more like 99.99 that it didn't occur.
Okay.
And 0.001 that it did.
Okay,
right?
gotcha. All right.
Because you're getting something that's hearsay of a hearsay.
Hearsay, yeah.
That's just bizarre.
Right.
So a top Republican, Chuck Grassley, he released this memo that was, I think it was a June of 2020 internal FBI report outlining claims by a foreign informant that these things that I told you about, had taken place. But there is no evidence that Joe Biden received any payments from the Ukraine. Senior congressional Republicans have acknowledged that the allegation is unverified. So they're pressing an investigation on an allegation that they don't have anything at the end of the of proof other than the assertion that somebody said that they talked to somebody who said they talked to somebody else who said that blah, blah, blah occurred.
Right.
The memo contains a claim that Hunter Biden was hired by Ukrainian energy company Burisma in 2013 as a way to gain support from his father, who was obviously vice president at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It also alleges that Burisma made 2 payments of $5 million to the Bidens as part of the efforts to remove Ukraine's prosecutor general at that time, a guy named Viktor Shokin, and that there were audio recordings of both Hunter Biden and Joe Biden that supported this. Now, if you said there's audio records, produce the audio records.
Right.
We'll stop fussing.
I'm listening to you, Mr. Hare, and it's like I understand why people get in politics, because you get in a certain position, people trying to throw you money to get your influence or to get your...
Well, also, the other side of it is that people will accuse you of having received bribes from people that you didn't receive.
Right.
Getting bribes from people who you never met.
Right.
Things that just never occurred.
Could you imagine Trump, what he probably gets from whoever? I can imagine him receiving money everywhere.
So Trump is a person that you got records that show that he's taking money from people. You know, they Saudis, you know, spent $3 million to use the hotels that he had control of in Washington, D.C. They didn't have to use that hotel, but they did it so that they could put $3 million in Donald Trump's pocket. Right.
Reason.
That's supposed to be illegal. Right. It's called emoluments.
Yeah, but there's no way to prove that because they use his services.
Precisely.
So there's no
way
to prove that.
And that's the deal. Right. But because you got a hearsay of a hearsay of a hearsay about Joe Biden, you got a House Oversight Committee investigation, you know, running around trying to, you know, to give credence to that.
Right.
So the informant told the FBI that he had learned these details during conversations that he had with the Burisma's chief executive and other company officials in 2015 or 16. Now, this is the informant talking about a conversation that he had with the Burisma chief executive and other company officials in 2015 and 16 about something that took place in 2013. And this is 2020 when the memo surfaced, and 2023, 10 years later, that we're talking about it. The credibility gets strained, okay? In fact, Vice President Biden has publicly pressed for Mr. Shokin's removal, or had publicly pressed for Victor Shokin's removal as part of a larger effort by the Obama administration and U.S. allies due to concerns that Shokin was ineffective in tackling corruption in Ukraine. So it wasn't that, why would you spend $10 million bribing Joe Biden to do something that the Obama administration was already doing? There's no credibility at all in what James Comer is saying, but it's in the news cycle, right? So Grassley and other Republicans have said that the FBI considers the informant that they're talking about, the one who is repeating what he said, somebody else said that somebody else said. He's saying that that informant is highly credible. The report details how the informant said that he couldn't vouch for the accuracy of the information he was passing along, but I'm a credible person. I'm a good guy. You know, the information I'm sharing with you, I can't account for it, but I'm a good guy, right? So in its public release, I won't even go through that. Since regaining majority in the House last year, Republicans have launched a range of investigations into President Joe Biden and his family. The allegations detailed in this FBI document are similar to ones that have been aired in past years by Biden's political opponents. Giuliani, who's the mainstream in this, remember when Donald Trump asked Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, asked him if he could just help him, just do us a favor, you know, and help us, you know, get some substance on Hunter Biden and his relationship with Burisma, and how he used his relationship with his father to be able to grease the skids to do something in the Ukraine. Just help us out, you know, just, you know, give us something. And, you know, we'll make sure that $400 million in weapons that you needed, you know, to defend Ukraine, we'll make sure you get that money. And the implication is, if you don't give us information that allows us to be able to impugn Joe Biden, then it doesn't look like it's a real good likelihood that you're going to get that $400 million in weapons, right? That's what was really going on. Giuliani's accusations against Biden became the focus of Donald Trump's first impeachment trial in 2019, which centered on the president's efforts to pressure Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to announce that he was launching an investigation into Joe Biden's supposed ties to Burisma. Bill Barr led the corruption inquiry in 2020. He opened this investigation as a part of his opening salvo of being hired by Donald Trump in the first place. It's like the very first thing that he did. He told the Federalist newspaper last month that he passed passed the case on to the U.S. attorney in Joe Biden's home state of Delaware, but no charges were ever filed in the case. White House spokesman Ian Sams said it's remarkable that congressional Republicans, in their eagerness to go after Joe Biden, regardless of the truth, continue to push claims that have been debunked for years. It is clear that congressional Republicans are dead set on playing shameless, dishonest politics, and they refuse to let truth get in their way. So I don't know if I want to go much more on that. I think you got the basic idea there. I want to hit a little bit on Eileen Cannon, District Judge Eileen Cannon. We met her earlier this year when we were dealing with the investigation and the indictment over the classified documents that were taken by Donald Trump, and he refused to give them back to the National Archives and Records Administration. And as that case was being prosecuted, and they're going through the steps, one of the things they needed to do was to ensure that Donald Trump doesn't get access to documents that he could then go out and use the information in those documents to sort of politicize aspects of the investigation and cause misconduct, by revealing information that he should not be revealing. So they wanted to keep a lid on access to those documents. Eileen Cannon, who's the judge that is the judge over this case in the federal court, she basically said, well, I think we need to allow an independent referee look at all of the documents and see which ones really should be classified and which ones shouldn't, which ones were safe for people to see and which ones, were too risky for people to see. And I'm going to appoint a special investigator to do that. Now, of course, what would that do? It would make the investigation that could have taken 1 or 2 months now take 1 or 2 years, right? And that would put off the prosecution of Donald Trump for at least a year, maybe more, and so on. Because she's a judge who has very little judicial experience. My understanding is she's only had 4 or 5 cases, that she's never written a brief, herself, and so on. Well, that same judge now became the judge in the Florida case of the records theft in the Georgia case. That came back to Eileen Cannon again. The same case, just at a different stage, came back to Judge Eileen Cannon. She was in the rotation, the next person, according to them, the next person up to bat to be the judge assigned to that case. So I went to an article written by Tommy Christopher. Trump lawyers demand Trump-appointed judge take action against Jack Smith for intentionally derailing presidential campaign. So here's the thing that we started talking about initially in today's program, that Trump is trying to use his announcement of his candidacy for the presidency to claim that any investigations of him are attempts by the Democrats to derail Donald Trump's presidential campaign, and that should be considered illegal, that should not be accepted. So attorneys for ex-President Donald Trump asked Trump-appointed Judge Eileen Cannon to take appropriate action against special counsel Jack Smith, claiming that he is intentionally trying to prevent Trump from campaigning. Now, Jack Smith is a special counsel that was appointed 9 months ago because they needed somebody to more intensely manage the prosecution or the investigation that might lead to the prosecution of Donald Trump. He was the one appointed to do that, and he's doing it. He's doing what he was assigned to do by Merrick Garland, who is the Attorney General for the United States. They're saying, Republicans are saying, and that's what these attorneys for Donald Trump are saying, is that the investigation was done to derail Donald Trump's candidacy. Donald Trump's candidacy didn't begin until November of last year. The investigation began in, I believe it was in August or September of last year, that Jack Smith was appointed to the special counsel position. So anyway, Judge Cannon was selected at random to preside over the trial on 37 counts against Donald Trump related to the Espionage Act violations, and was also behind a controversial ruling that was overturned by an appeals court in a blistering decision by a panel that included 2 other Trump appointees. The decision that she had made to appoint a special counsel to overview or to review each one of the documents that were in Trump's possession before they would be suppressed for the purposes of the investigation. That ruling was actually overturned by a three judge panel in the Federal Circuit Court. While Judge Cannon's rulings have not been uniformly favorable to Trump, some of her behaviors have raised questions. In other words, in an order denying special counsel Jack Smith's request to seal certain evidence in the classified documents case, Judge Cannon also ordered Smith to address the legal propriety of using an out-of-district grand jury proceeding to continue to investigate and or seek post-indictment hearings on matters pertinent to the incident or the incidences indicted in this district. So what she's done is she's added something to the issue. The issue was supposed to be about sealing or keeping out of the public domain certain sets of documents that would be irresponsible to be put into the public domain. She's taken that issue and she's morphed it into a completely different issue about something that had nothing to do, with what was brought before her court. I can't go through all of this right now because we're at the end of our hour. I just over-talked what I was trying to get to today. I just want us to understand that if there's a conspiracy here, it's a conspiracy to suppress an investigation that should be going on, that should be prosecuted by people whose agenda is not truth and justice and fairness for the United States, whose agenda is only about increasing their ability to maintain power in the United States. That's the point that we wanted to make in today's program. Thank you all for listening to us and supporting us. We look forward to talking to you all on Wednesday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. See you all then.